what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Footcandle Films. I'm Alan.
And
I'm sorry, I didn't give you the cue, Chris. So I'm sorry. I should have pointed to you.
That's all right.
Cue is now over to you. I'm Alan.
And I am Chris.
There we go. All right. We'll get the hang of this one of these days.
I mean, it's only, I don't think we're up to 100 episodes yet. But
not quite. Are we going to do a big victory, like a big celebration on our 100th episode? Is that kind of the plan?
I think we should.
Very nice. Well, I'm Alan. This is Chris. This is Footcandle Films. This is our show here on The Mesh where we talk about movies. We review some movies. We give some movie news. And we always end up the show with a recommendation of a film that you ought to check out online that you may have missed in recent years. This is part of the Mesh Network. Of course, you're listening to themesh.tv right now. This is one of the shows on the Mesh Network. You can always visit us at themesh.tv. Go back in time and listen to old episodes all the way back from the very beginning and subscribe to the show, which would be really, really nice. That way you can ensure yourself that you will get every new Footcandle Films episode that comes out the minute it comes out, through iTunes, through Stitcher Radio, through whatever other software you use to subscribe to podcasts such as this. So, Chris, today on our show, we've actually got two main big reviews of films that we're both going to review.
And I cannot wait to discuss Freebirds because I know it goes without saying that Owen Wilson's vocal performance was awesome, but I'm curious to hear your take on Woody Harrelson's.
I never saw Freebirds. So we may have to pass on that one today.
Oh man,
I'm sorry. I made you go out and watch that movie, and now we can't review it.
I'm depressed.
I'm really sorry. Now let's review two films that are much much more uplifting and funny and happy-go-lucky as we review 12 Years a Slave, the film by Steve McQueen, and the documentary Blackfish, documentary about killer whales that have killed people. Actually, neither of those are really much happier than Freebirds. Although Freebirds is about turkeys that are trying to save themselves, right? I mean, so there's a little...
Okay, I admit I haven't seen it. Okay,
we haven't seen it. Good. We don't have to talk about it then.
No.
We are going to talk about 12 Years a Slave, and we're going to talk about Blackfish. Talk about both of those in just a moment. And then we'll get into some news items, and then you and I will wrap it up, as always, with our recommendation of a film that we think you ought to check out.
Sounds good.
So let's get right into it with our first review. The film is 12 Years a Slave.
I want to ask you what part of the country you come from.
I originate from Canada. I guess where that is.
Oh, I know where Canada is. I've been there myself.
Well traveled for a slave.
Solomon Northup is an expert player on the violin.
I was born a free man. Lived with my family in New York.
Be good for your mother.
Till the day I was deceived.
To Solomon.
Kidnapped. Sold into slavery.
12 Years a Slave is the latest film from director Steve McQueen. Must be noted, not the old actor. I know there was some confusion about that when his name came up in a conversation I had with somebody the other day. Steve McQueen, who has made a few films already, two in particular I know of. The film Hunger from several years ago, starring Michael Fassbender, who you're going to hear that name come up a bit because he and Steve McQueen are a little bit of a collaboration team right now. They also worked together on the film Shame that was just maybe 2 years ago.
Something like that.
Also starring Fassbender. Where Hunger had to deal with captives staging a hunger strike.
Was like the Irish Republican Army type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Shame had to do with sexual addiction.
Correct.
Person dealing with sexual addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have 12 Years a Slave, which is starring Chiwetel Ejiofor as Solomon Northup, who is a free man back in the days after the Civil War. Freed man up north. He is, not a slave. He is a very accomplished musician. He is a family man, very upstanding citizen. But while traveling, fell into the captive of someone who turned him back into a slave, basically stripped him of his rights, put him back into the slave trade. And he had to live out his life as a slave for, as the title says, a full 12 years. It's based on a true story, based on a novel that was written by, or a biography written by Solomon Northup, an autobiography there about the experience. With this film, we have a very, very large cast. Even, in fact, when I went into IMDb to look up some of the names, I mean, the cast list scrolled on a very, very long time. And a lot of people involved in this film, a lot of people with small parts. But it does document that 12-year period from being captured and against his rights and turned back into a slave. And then finally, not to spoil it, but I mean, as kind of the 12 Years a Slave title kind of gives it away that we see it through the end of that period of time. With this, Chris, I'm curious. You know, we've seen a few films in the last couple of years that are this whole taking a long period of time, a true story, and documenting it all the way through. Sometimes there's always a danger of, if you try to capture such a long period of time, you kind of have to hit a lot of highlights and kind of gloss over it. Sure. Kind of that standard biography picture thing that I always complain about. It feels like you're seeing more of a Cliff Notes version. Sure. Instead of really getting to dig into any of the events themselves. So that's my first question for you. With this film, with it being so expansive and such a long story to tell, do you feel like it accomplished what it needed to accomplish in telling the story the right way to make the most impact? Or did it fall into those same biography film type trappings?
Well, for me, it definitely didn't fall into a stereotypical biographic pick. It was very unique in that, to me, it definitely had the art house flavor. Okay. Even though, like you said, it did have a big cast, it never felt like a sweeping epic, which it could be because of the time period and because it's a story about slavery. You know, it could very easily be, or slavery after the Civil War, but it could very easily have the type of scope that like Lincoln did, you know, because it's going to, you know, you think, okay, it's going to have lots of people, but it doesn't do that. It maintains a very small nature, even though it is telling a story of a guy who has moved around between plantations and he starts up north. And you know, you do have the period costumes, and I'm not trying to say it looks cheap or it looks like something that you would see on PBS, you know, right. It's not like that. So I was really impressed with the way it told the story, but yet kept it very unique. And I really responded to it and really liked the picture. And I feel like, you know, with many movies, especially with this subject material about someone being a slave, you've seen similar stories of that time period. And for it to be that fresh and to keep it interesting to me, I would have thought that going into this movie that I would have felt like I had been in the movie theater for 12 years. And I didn't feel that way. I thought it went really fast. And it was refreshing to see something that touched on that subject matter and made it new, I guess, in a way. Unlike, you know, Lincoln, not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but not very fresh. And something that deals with not slavery, but deals with, like, you know, racism and everything, like The Butler. That was so stale and boring. So it's like this movie took some themes and made it new. So that was kind of my take on it.
Maybe the word you were looking for too is grounded. I think it was a much more grounded film in that it didn't go for the sweeping epic feel. It didn't go for the over-the-top scenery and costumes and everything like that. It felt much more lived in. It was just, it was the kind of way I took away from it.
I can see that.
You know, I'm going to give this film an overall positive recommendation, although it's not a terribly strong one.
Okay.
I've got a few misgivings with the film.
Really?
I do want to get into. Oh, okay. Yeah. But let me talk about the things I liked as well. Okay. Michael Fassbender.
Oh, yeah.
Just go ahead and say he plays one of the plantation owners, one that has a little more interesting personality quirks. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I just thought he was, again, great. I'm hard pressed at this point to find anything I've seen him do that I haven't thoroughly enjoyed.
Sure.
To the point where his character is kind of in the middle of the film, plays a pretty big role in the middle of the film. Then he disappears for a while, and then he does show back up towards the end. And when he shows back up, it's one of those like, oh, good, his character's back on the screen. Even though you despise him, you're happy to see him back on the screen because you've got something really interesting to watch at that point.
Okay.
And I'm going to call out somebody who played one of the fellow slaves to Solomon. I believe it was Patsy, played by Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah.
Very, very good. I've never seen her in anything else. I don't know how seasoned an actress she is, but I thought the scenes she was involved with, very, very good. She put on a very good performance there.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'll say with Chiwetel Ejiofor, he was fine as Solomon Northup. Maybe his character was probably a little bit of my misgiving with the film, which I'll talk about in a little bit, some of my concerns. I expected a little more from his performance, and I didn't get quite what I was looking for. But again, I've got a little more to talk about with that. That's more of a culprit of the film itself than it is in the story than it is his performance. I'm with you on kind of that art house feel to it. I mean, even though, yes, this was starts on this time period and it ends on this time period, and you've got to hit all these major events that go along the way, but they did enough with it interesting that you didn't feel like you were watching that standard biography film. Some of the use of very long, unnerving shots. Mm-hmm. One in particular, there's a shot where a character is hanging from a noose. Yes. But just barely able to touch the ground with his feet, so that he was not dead, but he was definitely not comfortable in the slightest. Sure. And that shot, I mean, dare say, was that a 3-4 minute shot? It was long. It was a very long shot. And I could see some people in the audience squirming after about the first 30, 45 seconds, like wondering how long is this shot going to go on, because it was painful to watch. Mm-hmm. But I do think shots like that, after the end of those shots, I had to sigh a relief. I mean, not out of boredom or anything. It was really, I was enthralled by it, and actually it kind of built up some of that anxiety and the emotion I think they were trying to get out of you with those long shots. So things like that I thought were a very nice touch and very, very well done by the film.
I would agree. And I think kind of the hesitating frames and letting things linger, that to me was more artfully done than if it just cut away. You know, it makes you stay in that moment. There's a scene where a slave is getting whipped that's also pretty obviously brutal. And it just, I don't know, it kind of elevated the movie for me.
And I will say, I thought the ending was powerful, without going into too many details, although I don't think it's what it could have been. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to spoil the ending, obviously. I don't want to spoil the ending, but it could have, it should have been a better ending. I thought I can see that. Yeah, sure. It was a good ending, and it did kind of punch me in the gut. It was an emotional ending for me, but it should have been more. Given what the film is about, the subject matter, the story, the ending should have packed a lot more of a punch than it did. Okay. I feel like. Let me talk about some of the things I have some concerns about, unless there are some other positives you want to pull out. Well, I would actually, I touched on how I liked the cinematography, and I thought that was really good. I will say the other thing that I appreciated was the soundtrack of the movie. Solomon was a musician, and he played the violin, and it incorporated a lot of violin music, even if he wasn't the one playing it. And just, I don't know, I really appreciated the soundtrack. It kept in the period, but yet was kind of odd and unnerving. And to me, it sounded like something Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead would have done. It was not that he was ripping off Johnny Greenwood, There Will Be Blood, but it was reminiscent of that kind of new way of doing a soundtrack. Well, they didn't go for the sweepings, swelling epic music score. And the epic score music. It was much more, I mean, there was a lot of music. It wasn't one of those where they tried to keep it more authentic and silent. I mean, there was music to accentuate scenes, but you're right, the music was much more, it's that grounded again. I just felt like it was more of the day and not polished, orchestrated music meant to evoke emotions. This was more to carry a tone with the film. I can't wait for your negatives, because I have one, but I don't think you've even mentioned it yet. So I can't wait for you. I've got my defensive. I'm going to guess posture. I know what your negative is, and if I'm right, yes, I've got it on my list. But we'll see if we get to it here in a second. Okay, we got to talk about some of the supporting cast, and that does get into one of my areas of concerns. Okay, we had a lot of bigger name actors show up in this film. Sure, Paul Giamatti, Benedict Cumberbatch, Paul Dano, Alfre Woodard, and then somebody else we'll talk about in a moment. Okay. Even Taron Killam, who I like on Saturday Night Live, has a small role early in the film. Those little supporting actor, little guest star performances, whatever you want to call them, started to wear me down after a while. Really? Yeah, because it was almost more of a matter of, oh, look who they trotted out to play this part. Oh, I wonder who's going to be in the next scene. Oh, look, it's Sherlock. It's just... That didn't work for me. I actually would have enjoyed it more if it had been unknowns. Because I thought the parts were right. I mean, the tone of the dialogue, the scenes that they were in were very well done. But I thought it was just distracting from a film that's meant to be so grounded. When you start throwing in big celebrity names and more into it, it just didn't work for me. I just didn't think it really kept with the tone of the film. Well, it didn't.
It didn't bother me. Yes, the big names were there, but it didn't bother me, unlike something like The Butler, where you had all these, which also had a huge cast.
It did.
And every time, that was like fingernails on a chalkboard. Every time they did. With like Giamatti, his performance, I thought was spot on. It wasn't over the top.
No, it was a
I
good
thought it was spot
performance.
on. And you could have had somebody minor, but I think there was a little bit of gravitas that I think Giamatti brought to it that he was able to do. Not that an unknown couldn't have done it, but I think that it was allowed him to kind of have a little bit of extra flair in the role. Cumberbatch, there again, it could have been an unknown. He plays another slave owner that Northrop kind of wanders to his plantation at one point. I don't know. I thought he had a little bit of gravitas. There was a little something. It could have been an unknown.
Good. They were all good. That's the thing. None of the ones I mentioned were bad in their performances. They were very good performances. It's just a shame that it had to be the big names. When even Chiwetel, he's a really good actor and he's had some meaty roles in a few movies in the last few years, but he's not a household name. Most of the American public watching this film won't know who he is. So you had your mate, even Michael Fassbender, you could argue to some degree is not a household name quite yet. He's getting closer, not quite there. I do say Paul Giamatti, Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is a recognizable face enough by most people.
He was in the Star Trek movie.
He was in the Star Trek movie. Those are just the ones it would have been nicer to have somebody smaller in those, I guess.
Usually, I think I'd be on the same page with you, but I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but in this sense, I think you're wrong.
But can we talk about Brad Pitt, though?
Well, I
was that your one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would.
Well, let me just set it up for everybody.
Sure.
Brad Pitt shows up 4/5 of the way through the film.
Right.
It's a fairly pivotal role, even though he's only in it for like 10 minutes.
Right.
It's a very pivotal role.
It
actually.
is.
And it's Brad Pitt, and he pretty much is Brad Pitt. And he's the most jarring thing in the film, where that was probably, maybe let me back up. Maybe if Brad Pitt was not in this film, I would have been okay with all these other ones.
Okay. And
But when we got to Brad Pitt, I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? The last pivotal guest star role is Brad Pitt, and he plays like a really meaningful role. He plays a savior type role.
Yeah. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That was fingernails on the chalkboard for me, and I even knew it was coming because I'd heard that he was in the film and he was a producer on the film.
I knew he was a producer. I didn't know he was in it.
And so that was bad for me. And I think the other cameos, if you want to call them those, the big name actors, their roles were good, but they weren't pivotal, so it didn't bother me.
Okay.
The problem was Pitt was pivotal, and it was very distracting. Very distracting.
He meets Solomon. In a very short period of time, he makes a major impact on the storyline.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like we need somebody to play this extremely pivotal role. Oh, let's get Brad Pitt to play it. And of course, Brad Pitt is getting to play all rugged, and he's got long hair, and he's really not acting any more than Brad Pitt normally does.
Oh, man.
It was distracting.
See, Brad Pitt, I'm not saying he's, one of the best actors of all time. I like him, though. I don't
mind him.
I think he's a good actor, and I think in this instance, he had that role, and the director just went and took a coffee break, and he just kind of had that scene. And I think the director actually, I will fault him. I think he needed to kind of rein in that performance a little bit and make it more subdued instead of, like you say, it was kind of Brad Pitt was in a different movie. Yeah. It was like he had been taken. It was like he had been taken from The Butler, or he had been taken from
exactly that scene was the most like The Butler of any of the scenes in the movie. And the shame of it is that came so close to the end of the movie.
That's one
of the ones you remember most. Yeah. And of course, it had of all the supporting characters, had the most impact on the storyline.
Okay, I agree with you on that.
So that was a huge misgiving for me. And I guess in retrospect, as I looked at that, I thought, okay, all the other guest stars, kind of irritated me. Sure. Yeah, if Pitt had not been in the movie, I probably could have watched it again and not minded the other performances or other appearances. Again, the performances were all really good. It was more the fact that it was the person that was playing them that I felt like was distracting and more of well, let's throw a little bone to the audience by giving them a big name that they can you almost hear everybody in the audience oh, look, it's Paul Giamatti, showing up in a scene. It's that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to be a character that was repulsive to me, and I didn't want it to be hinging on some big name actor to play
I understand.
So.
Interesting.
The only other issue I had, and this is more of a story of the film, is I felt like the actual character, Solomon Northup, the main character we're following, and this is going to sound very odd for me to say.
Okay.
But by the end of the film, when we get the ending we do, the end of the story for him, I felt like looking backwards that he was more of a bystander in all of the anguish and and drama that was happening around him,
Right.
where I would have felt looking back on the story. I mean, yes, slavery, absolutely despicable and horrible. And it was just one of the worst things that anybody could have imagined being impacted.
Sure.
But to me, his situation of he was a free man
Correct.
with a family.
Correct.
That he got ripped away from and turned back into a slave for all this time. I never really got the sense through the film that it was really impacting him the way I thought it should have.
Well, and I the film to me was interested in, it's like it wasn't interested in showing you a lot of depth of his character. It was interested in just kind of showing you, like, here are all these different situations.
Yeah.
And it didn't bother me that they didn't go down that road where it's not like, it's almost like it didn't really feel like a biography of him.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like, this is kind of slavery. And this is kind of a weird slant on slavery.
Story to give everybody watching this film an insight of what this world was like.
Right.
Which, for that purpose, it works really, really well. It's just the shame of it is when we get to the end is all about Solomon Northup.
True.
And by
Whereas
that
the rest
point,
of the film
I just felt
hasn't.
like, okay, so we haven't really earned this ending.
I can see that.
That's probably my personal misgiving of the film.
Okay.
It doesn't make it a bad film. It's just, I think it would have worked better for me if we had gotten to know Solomon's character more, what he personally and emotionally was going through, not what everybody else was. That was handled very well.
Okay.
It's more of, I wanted to see more his own personal experience and reaction to things and what he was feeling and going through, as opposed to just having to imagine it or assume it based on what he's seeing around him.
And I understand. And I kind of saw that distance, and I guess I liked it. Something about me, I guess, because it was so
worked
different
for
from,
you. Yeah,
it worked for
that's
me.
fine.
The kind of detached difference. Yeah.
Hey, we can have some different opinions on
That's
this one,
true.
but it sounds like we're both saying we're admiring the film for what it is.
Right.
And it's just you and I just had different things that we kind of wanted out of it. So sounds like.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I would personally give it a positive recommendation. It's not, I really went in hoping to love this film and I didn't love it, but I do respect it and I liked it. I would say it's worth checking out. It's worth seeing for sure, but there was enough things that just really kind of jabbed at me to keep me from saying I loved it.
Understandable.
You had a very positive.
I have a very positive review of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good. I mean, right now it's being batted around as one of, the top contender for Best Picture. I mean, is it in the neighborhood that for you?
For me, it definitely is. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
I think it's worth being one of the contenders. I don't know if I'm willing to say it's the best yet, but
Okay.
I have to kind of look back at the rest of the year and see how we feel about it for sure.
Agreed.
All right.
Okay.
So that's 12 Years a Slave. That's Steve McQueen's latest film starring Chiwetel Ejiofor, Michael Fassbender, and Brad Pitt.
Yes.
So definitely worth checking out. We will say if you have a chance to see it, please try to do that. It's an important film, and I think the story itself is fascinating. I'm actually kind of curious to see if I can track down the book and actually read that it's based off of. It would be interesting to read. So let's move on to our second film, which is a documentary, and the documentary is called Blackfish.
When you look into their eyes, you know somebody is home.
They're an animal that possesses great spiritual power, not to be meddled with.
Orange County Sheriff's Office.
We need SO to respond for a dead person at SeaWorld. A whale has eaten one of the trainers.
Blackfish is a documentary that focuses on a notorious killer whale called Tilikum, which is kind of fun to say, Tilikum. And this whale was responsible for the deaths of 3 different individuals. The most recent one, I believe, was the one that was in 2010. And it made a lot of news. And I remember hearing about it. It was Dawn Brancho. Is that how you say her last name?
I believe so, yes.
And that kind of, I think, was also what spurred the documentary filmmaker to start making this movie, was kind of the case that surrounded it. It ended up being a court case and then legal matters in SeaWorld. Alan, I heard recently on Twitter that a band that I like, Bare Naked Ladies, had seen this documentary. And after seeing this documentary, they then canceled a show that they were supposed to do at SeaWorld. And I thought, interesting. After you having seen this documentary,
yes,
how did it make you feel? And what are your feelings about SeaWorld? And do you think the documentary was manipulative? How do you feel about bare naked ladies? No, that's not important.
But interesting questions all the way around, Chris. Yeah, this is a tough one for me. You probably know about. I was on the debate team back in high school, a little bit in college as well, and I kind of enjoy the art of debate.
Okay.
And this film has put me in a debate mode more than probably any other film I've had recently watched.
Are we going to have as good a debate as we did about a hijacking about the corporate leader and about where we stand on his
maybe.
morals?
It depends on where you're going to come from on this.
Okay.
So the idea of a debate is to have a really good debate, to have something where you can listen to the debate and really feel like you're in the middle and you can make an informed judgment opinion. You've got to hear both sides. Mm-hmm. And both sides have got to be represented equally to some degree, even though the director in a documentary may already have a very personal opinion which way he's going on this.
Right.
And he obviously has some control as to how they're going to craft the documentary to state their personal feeling or opinion. But you still hear the other side in a good documentary. You still see both sides so that you as a viewer can walk away saying, yeah, I totally get it. This side A is right on, and side B, they're a bunch of idiots, and makes sense. So my biggest concern with this film is that everything is from side A, meaning the side of former trainers that used to work at SeaWorld who are now very negative on SeaWorld and their practices and what happened. Save one. There's one guy that's mixed in.
I wish I could remember his name.
I can't either, but he's a former trainer which still kind of sided with SeaWorld. Wasn't a resounding endorsement of SeaWorld, but he kind of stuck up for them a little bit.
Right.
Besides that one guy who got a sliver of time every once in a while, it was all on the other side.
Railing against SeaWorld.
Now, somebody could look at this story and say, yes, absolutely, SeaWorld's at fault for doing all this stuff. Well, maybe. There again, with the film that we're shown, I didn't get enough to be able to base a true 100% opinion to say which way I felt like, who's at fault or who's responsible or what happened here. If you're somebody who gets very easily swayed by hearing a lot of very emotional stories and recounting of experiences, yes, absolutely. SeaWorld is horrible in what they're doing. It's a bad situation. The trainers are put at risk every day. These whales are not being handled the way they should, all this other stuff. I just walked away from this film feeling more of a I didn't hear both sides. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
One of the biggest arguments that the former trainers who are now kind of speaking out about what's happening there said is that when they applied for the job to be a trainer, they were just kind of thrown in the mix with the water and say, here, go to it. Mm-hmm. So in other words, implying that there was no real safety training. Or
it was more like beef up and be an athlete as opposed to learn about the fish.
Which, okay, if that's true,
animals.
That's a problem. But hearing them just say that in kind of passing without really being able to see what is the training program that they go through. Because somebody could look back in time and say, oh, yeah, they just kind of threw me out there and let me go. Well, their definition of that may have been they went through 2 solid weeks of training, but they thought they should have gotten more. You know, it's hard to gauge what's going on.
I'll agree, but how does the documentary filmmaker get SeaWorld to give him that access?
Now,
because clearly, I think you and I are on the same page. I liked this documentary, but I will admit it was troubling to me that in the back of my mind, I kind of kept wanting to hear SeaWorld's side.
Yeah.
And I never got that.
Now, they did state at the end that they reached out to SeaWorld many times and they denied.
Which, big shock that SeaWorld would not agree to do it.
Yeah. But, it makes it problematic to watch a film like this because it obviously is going for emotion. It's going for reaction. It's going for you feeling horrified by what's happening and what's going on and kind of the negligence that's being put on throughout the process. But I have a hard time buying the negligence part unless I can see that, yes, this is what the training program is like. And oh my gosh, the training is almost non-existent on how to safely take care of yourself around these animals. What about the disclaimers? What about the waivers that I'm sure these employees are having to sign when they come on board? You know, how comprehensive are those? How upfront is SeaWorld with the new employees when they come on board that, hey, listen, guys, there are risks here. There are dangers. We don't know that. And it's almost like, okay, so everything is getting put blame on SeaWorld for doing this, but yet does that mean that the circus, if somebody gets mauled by if somebody's a lion tamer and a lion attacks one of the lion tamers, that all of a sudden the circus is the bad guy for having a lion tamer in the first place?
Well, and my counter to that would be that it is, I don't know how I feel about circuses, but my response to that would be hopefully there are veterinarians, and I've heard that there are veterinarians that travel around with circuses and they try to keep the animals in really good condition and they care about what happens to the animals. And from the way, again, we don't know SeaWorld side, but it wasn't only that the trainers were in danger, and that was very bothersome. And so, but what I also was concerned about was that it seemed to be very obvious, even to tourists that were at SeaWorld and would see like, oh yeah, there are all these marks on the side of the whales. And it seemed very obvious that the animals were miserable. And I can't.
See, and I never got that. I mean, I see the marks on the side of the animals, but I also see that from animals fighting sometimes. And I mean, that's what happens in the wild too. I never got the sense.
Yeah, but in the wild, they can get away.
Well,
they're not in a pen where they can't move. True there.
It's one of those arguments that, I mean, believe me, I'm going on record saying that animals should be out in the wild as much as possible. I'm not advocating that animals should be pinned up and treated like this.
Sure.
However, I never got enough information from the documentary to say that because of the conditions they were treated in, that was why these animals were reacting the way they were sometimes.
Oh, man.
I never got that.
Oh, man. I did, and I just can't. Again, it would be interesting to hear SeaWorld side. But they said that the animals basically get depressed and their behaviors become depressed. One of the things they point out, which I thought was kind of fascinating, I remember when the movie Free Willy came out. I never actually saw it, but I saw images from it. And the whale had like a fin that was kind of droopy.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out to me at one time, well, yeah, you can tell that whale's not really like a free whale or whatever. He's never going to be free because he's obviously been in captivity because his little fin's drooping. I was like, oh, whatever. And I'd totally forgotten that conversation until watching this documentary. And they spoke about how male whales that are brought into this atmosphere, within a couple of months or whatever, all of their fins droop. Whereas out in the wild, that does not happen. And if it does, it's a very, very, very small percentage, like 1%. And it's just like, I don't know. So
that one visual cue, okay, yeah, that's out there. Again, I know early in the documentary, when we're kind of tracing a little bit of the history of leading up to SeaWorld, was it Sealand or what was
Sealand.
Sealand was
creative
kind of
names there.
Yeah, it was kind of the early precursor to SeaWorld, and it was not a very nice facility. It was very rundown and small, and these whales were basically kept in this little metal shack back in the back of it. Yeah, I got the picture there. Okay, that's not the way these whales ought to be taken care of. After that, I'm being told that the whales may be getting depressed at SeaWorld and don't like to be a captive. However, everything I see is big, expansive spaces, high-tech facilities, and all that. So it just didn't jive as much.
But the whale Tilikum came from Sealand to SeaWorld.
He did.
So he was damaged by the time he got to SeaWorld.
True. Now, granted, what was happening at Sealand, I absolutely,
Sure.
I don't think that was right at all. And I think the movie made a good case of stating that. And this segues into my next little point, which may be a little controversial.
Okay.
All right. So when you go to McDonald's and you order your coffee in the drive-thru, and there was a lawsuit about this many years ago.
Right.
The coffee's really hot. You know that. You ordered coffee.
And it says it on the cup now.
Well, it says it on the cup now because there's enough idiots out there that say, I didn't know coffee was going to be scalding hot. Well, coffee is meant to be extremely hot. Common sense tells you when you order coffee, it's going to be hot.
Right.
If you did not expect it to be hot and then you get burned, do you really have a right to be mad about the fact that you spilled some coffee on yourself and you burn yourself? I don't think you have a right to be mad. I think common sense, in life, we ought to be using common sense more.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of me that wants to say, all right, people, you guys signed up to be trainers with wild animals in captivity. Now, they can argue that maybe the training was not as good as it needed to be. And that's very possible without really knowing what the training and the safety precautions were, which I never really got a sense for. But at the same time, I've got to think that as a human being, when you elect to take a job where you're working with animals, especially very large, with large teeth that are not domesticated in any way, shape, or form, animals not meant to be domesticated, you do take a burden of risk on yourself on things. I almost felt like the documentary went overboard in trying to say that everybody who chose to work at SeaWorld, if anything happened to them, it was a complete shock and this never should have happened. And my argument is, well, I mean, it's still wild animals. I mean,
Sure.
I've had a dog in my house, and the dog snapped at one of my kids one time. It's still an animal. I made a decision to bring that dog in the house. That's on me. It's not. Anyway, that like I said, it's a little more of a theoretical discussion on that.
Yeah, and I understand, but I blame SeaWorld for letting the trainers even have a job there. Like, I don't discount the fact that you get in a cage with a lion. That could potentially be dangerous, and if something were to happen, you shouldn't be surprised at. My point is that I don't think that situation should have been allowed to occur to begin with. I don't blame the trainers. I don't blame the whales. I blame the theme park. I don't think that idea, it should have never been in existence, I guess. Aquariums are one thing, but something that large, small fish swimming around in a big thing, fine. But I don't know. It just, and it was interesting to see.
I think we get in a real slippery slope on that then, because then you could say,
I can see that.
Right, well, so dogs and cats, should they be kept, if I've got a mid-sized Labrador or, should it be kept in a house? That's you start to get into.
But you're not making profit off that.
No,
I don't think you're charging people to come see your dog at your house.
But then we talk about things like, people who do stunts. We talk about anybody who does dangerous things for a living or decides to take on a job. Is it the industry's fault that those jobs existed in the first place, or is it the people's fault for electing to take a dangerous job and then going to the press and talking about it when things go wrong for somebody else in that profession?
I mean, it's there again. I guess straying pretty far away from the documentary, because documentaries are kind of difficult to talk about anyway.
Right, they are. They generally pose more questions than they do an assessment or.
But I would say this documentary was effective in that at least made me think.
Yeah,
and it did make me not want to go to SeaWorld. And I guess that's a bad thing because I didn't hear SeaWorld's side of it, but. If SeaWorld put out a documentary discussing this whole issue, I would definitely watch it because I'd be interested to hear their side of everything.
I guess that's my biggest thing is that I wish there was more. I wish it could have been two-sided, and I'm not faulting the filmmaker because it does sound like they tried to make it two-sided. But you assume it said they made numerous attempts.
Well, to your point, I will say too, can't remember the guy's name, but it's a shame that he wasn't allowed to maybe defend SeaWorld a little more, because it sounds from the way you're led to believe, it sounds like he might have done that. So it's a shame they didn't let him do that, or would have made it a little bit more balanced.
I will say, just from a technical standpoint, reviewing this as a film and not the subject matter or the topic at hand, it was a good, solid documentary, but there was nothing about it that was, from a filmmaking standpoint, from a documentary standpoint, nothing about it that was interesting to me. It was a very cut and dry. We do our interviews. We do our headshot testimonials. We do our interviews. We splice it with B-roll. We take archival footage. We cut it together. It followed a fairly linear path. I mean, it was a very straightforward documentary. It was a good, serviceable one. But it's honestly something I would have imagined more of a Discovery Channel piece that they did, or something on another network, maybe a television producing. If it's getting tons of praise as a documentary, I mean, I think it's a serviceable one, like I said, but I don't think there was anything about it that really pushed it to this upper echelon of documentaries. I look at the ones I've seen in the last couple of years and the ones we've talked about, Stories We Tell, which, granted, questionable how much of a true documentary it was, but at least it was taking a novel approach to a story and trying to give us that information. Then you look at Searching for Sugarman, which I think also took a very unique and very interesting approach to how it told its story. This one was pretty much by the book. We use B-roll footage, we use archival footage, and we use interviews with the people. And that's it. We cut it together. It's very cut and dry, very simple, done.
Well, and I responded to it, I think, because it was that way. I don't, you and I differed on Stories We Tell.
Yes.
And it's because now I've kind of had a chance to think about it even more. I don't consider that a documentary. I consider that something like Exit Through the Gift Shop. I love the heck out of the Exit Through the Gift Shop, which was done by Banksy, and it talks about graffiti. But it was never, in my mind, it was never intended to really be a doc. I don't know what it is.
You're taking the documentary to be truly documenting something real and not manipulating it.
Absolutely.
Not
I mean, you do manipulate just by how you choose to edit something.
Sure.
I understand that. But
outside of personal bias that you may show.
Basically, you don't have a lot of creativity in the way you show something.
Okay.
And Stories We Tell did, and it turned me off in a big way because it'd been labeled as such a documentary. Exit to the Gift Shop, not so much, because it's like this weird animal hybrid.
Well, I'll even say Man on Wire is a good example to me. me of a more interesting documentary in that it told the story, it gave the interviews, but it did it in such an interesting way that you just marveled at the filmmaking side of it. This one had nothing to marvel at filmmaking-wise. It was a very cut and dry.
Sure.
There again, most documentaries, this is what they seek to do. They're more interested in telling the story than they are trying to be artistic about it, and I get that, and this was a good example of that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, it worked for me. It was fine. It did definitely pose more questions in my mind probably by the end than anything.
I'll say that it did trouble me a little bit because it didn't make it cheesy, but the field trip that some of the former SeaWorld employees go on at the end, that to me
that was over
did
the
not.
top.
It rang over the top, rang a little false.
Well, and I mean, the first thing going through my head was, did these people even really know each other when they worked at SeaWorld together, or have they just now brought them together to look like they're best friends having a reunion going on this boat trip? Yeah, that was over the top and unnecessary, I thought. And the other thing that just also kind of just irritated me, the first one or two times they used an old SeaWorld commercial or video clip that was a little campy, a little, cheesy and all that. The first one or two times they use it just juxtaposed with a more tragic story, like cut together, it was okay. But when it happened to be like 4 or 5 times, it was a little manipulative, I thought. It's like, let's show, look how happy and glossy SeaWorld tries to be in their ads. And then, look what happened in real life. It was manipulative more than it needed to be, I guess. That was the only two, the ending reunion scene and the campy commercial juxtaposition were just a little much for me. Okay. I didn't think you needed them. I think you got your point across without them just fine of what's going on here. So, yeah, interesting. Actually, this would be one, if anybody else has had a chance to see it, it is available on iTunes and Amazon and other places online where you can rent it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it because this is definitely more of a discussion prompting film than probably any others we've talked about recently.
And you'll probably be hearing more about it because it did make the short list of documentaries for an Oscar. So it could end up being one of the final 5. So.
Wow. That's still interesting to me. Okay. No, I responded okay to it. I got more questions going on in my mind about how I feel about it afterwards, about the subject matter than the film itself. Okay. So that's Blackfish documentary. Documentary filmmaker's name is Gabriella Cowperwaith.
That sounds close.
Yeah, it's an interesting name, but I like it.
Sure.
Don't know anything about her. I didn't really do any research on her as a filmmaker, but well-made documentary. Definitely interesting topic matter too to consider. Okay, Chris, we need something a little happier.
Okay.
Can we do happy for the rest of the show?
Sure.
Okay, good. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's all happy, all positive the rest of the time here on Footcandle Films. We've got 2 quick reviews from Mr. Fry. I've got a couple news items and wrap up with our recommendations. So stay tuned. Footcandle Films. We'll be right back.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. This is Alan here with Chris as we talk about some films and movies and review a few and talk about some news and all that good stuff. We just finished our reviews, our downer reviews of the film Blackfish and 12 Years a Slave. Let's go on to 2 films that maybe won't have quite that much of a depressing factor on the show. Say we, Chris?
Yes.
We're going to do something I call Chris's quick reviews. These are films that you've seen, Mr. Fry. I have not seen.
Okay.
And in the essence of time and brevity, so we can move on with the rest of the show, I'm going to give you 120 seconds. That is a 2-minute window to review each of the 120 seconds for each of the 2 films that you're going to review for us. Okay. Your first one, my understanding, is the Disney animated film Frozen.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, sure.
And as I get ready to start the timer, are you ready with 2 minutes?
Yes, I think so.
I am starting the timer now. You have 2 minutes. Go.
Frozen, okay. Story about taken from Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, and it basically focuses on the Ice Princess or Ice Queen, who knows. But anyways, kind of an original story. I liked it. It's cool that it didn't focus on celebrity voices for once. I walked into the movie, didn't know who all the voices were going to be. That was kind of cool. Kristen Bell, I only knew her from Heroes. She plays one of the voices for the girls. I didn't even know she could sing. Apparently she can. There was the Snowman that you've probably seen in all the commercials. He's actually not annoying. He's kind of a funny character, voiced by a guy, don't remember his name.
Josh Gad.
There you go. Mm-hmm. And he was in the Book of Mormon on Broadway. So he's funny. It was just refreshing to see also that in this movie, it did what Brave failed to do and Princess and the Frog failed to do, in where it had a lead woman. Okay, that was unique, but that's been done before. But the lead woman was never a damsel in distress. She was strong, she was independent, and she had a guy help her at one point, help her to try to, her sister, basically it's two sisters, and one, everything she touches is like goes ice, and so she has to like run away because people start hunting her like she's Frankenstein's monster. So her sister has to go and try to save her and help her, and it's interesting, but not save her as much as try to bring her back and tell her everything's okay. So it was a very interesting Disney movie. And there's actually a twist that I did not foresee coming, which, you walk into a Disney movie, I'm sure Planes was filled with twists and turns, and you had no idea what was going to happen next.
A lot of meta messages and everything. Yeah, it was very deep.
But this, you walk into any kids movie, which this is obviously good family holiday film, and you think okay, this is where it's starting. I know where it's going to end. I wonder if it's going to end happily, but you kind of know everything that's going to happen, minus you don't know what the musical numbers are going to be. But this held my attention, and I wouldn't mind actually seeing it again, which for a kids movie, that's pretty impressive to be able to say. So I strongly recommend it. Good for the holidays. Take the whole family. I think, okay, there we go.
There's our 2-minute warning. Oh, Chris, you did pretty good, man. You actually gave a very full-featured,
I tried.
Very introspective review in 2 minutes. Not that bad. Not bad. I don't really have any follow-up questions because you actually answered the questions I was going to ask. You said the music was pretty good?
Yeah, and that, a lot of people are hearkening back to things like The Lion King is the one I hear the name tossed out a lot. Right. I'd have to see the music again or have to hear the music again to say like, okay, yeah, it's as good as the Beauty and the Beast soundtrack or the Aladdin soundtrack. But what I can say is that at least I wasn't irritated, and I felt like they stuck the songs in just because they wanted to make a Disney musical. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
And the Snowman song that Josh Gad does is hilarious. So, okay. Maybe it's not Oscar tier Disney worthy music, but it's pretty good. So.
Well, I've been really curious to see Disney's animation progression back over the years. I mean, if you remember, they hit their peak. Really, was Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. Mm-hmm. That was like the top. I mean, that was just, they could do no wrong in the animation department. Then it started to slip to a good period of 20 years almost, where animation wasn't that great. Right. It was a lot of second run movies, a lot of straight to DVD releases. Mm-hmm. Pixar became the one that just kind of took it over and ran with it. Right. Now, of course, Pixar is owned by Disney. Mm-hmm. I assumed that Disney was going to scale down its animation and just let Pixar become its animation group. But that's not what they're doing. They've actually ramped up their animation. Sure. Wreck-It Ralph, Tangled, now Frozen.
Tangled was another one that was like a damsel in distress.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, but they're good movies. I mean, very well, better made movies in general. So to see that quality starting to ramp up, and according to what you and I both said about Brave, Pixar film that we didn't really care for, Monsters University was okay, but Disney could have done it. It didn't have that Pixar touch to it. Right. I don't know. I think Pixar, I mean, it's weird to say Pixar versus Disney because they're technically the same company.
Yeah, I can't keep them straight.
I think they're going to kind of blend together over time and just be this premier animation studio, which I'm fine with. Yeah. So. Okay, 2 minutes was actually a lot longer than I expected. So let's see. But you may have a little bit more to say about this next one. The Hunger Games sequel just recently came out. Yes. It's called Catching Fire. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, even though this isn't a 100% sci-fi film, I know you are a fan of the genre sci-fi. Mm-hmm. This has enough sci-fi elements in there. Yeah. I'm curious to hear. Tell us what you thought about this film, and I'd love to actually hear in relation to what you thought about the original in comparison. And go.
Okay. If you liked the first film, Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games, clever title. Yes. Then you will like Catching Fire, or The Hunger Games: Catching Fire.
That'll be on the movie poster.
Yes.
Quote, if you like The Hunger Games, you'll like Catching Fire. Chris
Exactly.
Fry, Footcandle Films.
Exactly. Because, it follows the same characters. It's the same storyline. You had the battle to the death between a bunch of kids in the first movie, and then Katniss gets thrown back into the same situation again. She was the heroine from the first film. She's thrown back into the same situation with a couple little different twists. But it's basically high stakes that are even higher this time. And the movie was entertaining. It worked. They have Philip Seymour Hoffman is in this movie, and he plays the game maker, which had a different guy playing the game maker in the first film. Mm-hmm. He was a welcome addition for him to be in there. It was kind of cool to see him get to play the character that he got to play. Mm-hmm. I think the first film suffered a lot from it, had a lot of baggage about setting up relationships, which I guess any first film is going to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one I felt kind of jumped more into, okay, here's the stakes that are going on, here's the situation, and getting them into the arena. My regret is that we didn't get a lot more time in the arena because the setup is really cool. It's basically, they have all these little pitfalls and dangers that can befall them when they're in different areas. And I wish there would have been a little bit more explanation. Unfortunately, I did read the book, so I bring that, bias with me to the film, mm-hmm. but it doesn't keep me from enjoying the film. It was, good enough on its own right. And of course, Jennifer Lawrence, she is good. I mean, mm-hmm. I think she's good in everything she does. And what's amazing for me is that I buy her as being, a younger teen, but yet in Silver Linings Playbook, I bought her being this, older, much more mature woman. So that was
2 minutes are up.
Okay.
All right. Very nicely done, Chris. Yeah, you're pretty good at this whole 2-minute review thing. So maybe we just make the whole show.
Just talk really fast.
Just Chris 2 minutes reviews, and that's it. I actually finally caught up with the original Hunger Games not too long ago, maybe just a few months ago, and was pleasantly surprised. Better than I expected it to be. Okay. And so I am curious to see Catching Fire now. I do think Jennifer Lawrence is an extremely talented actress. Very excited to hear her in David O. Russell's American Hustle coming out this Christmas. You're not interested?
No, I'm not.
I'm terribly interested.
I just feel like it's just him making Goodfellas again.
Well, which, you know what, David O. Russell making Goodfellas, I'd be okay with that. I'm fine with that. Huh. I love Silver Linings Playbook. I love the Fighter, Flirting with Disaster, Three Kings. I mean, yeah, even I Heart Huckabees.
I Heart Huckabees.
It's a great
I do
film.
really like that.
It's a very good film.
But also, I didn't mention this in my 2-minute synopsis, but what bothers me is the third movie. There were 3 books. So, you can assume there's going to be another movie. But apparently it's not just one movie, it's 2 movies. They're pulling
the Deathly Hallows thing to it. So they're doing part
thank
1
God
and
they're
part 2.
not pulling a Hobbit where they're making 3 movies out of one book. But they are pulling, and I'm just, I have no tolerance for that. I don't understand why they're doing it. I mean, I know why they're doing it, but I just, very, very irritating.
You're not a big fan of the taking a story and splitting it into 2 movies thing, are you?
No.
Okay.
I'm a fan of doing what they did with Goblet of Fire, which was a Harry Potter movie. Really long book. They just left out some stuff and still made a good movie. If you're that interested in it, go read the book.
Okay.
So
I don't mind. I like more opportunities to get into the movies and see good movies, so it's fine by me. Thank you, Chris. Frozen and Catching Fire, both positive reviews from Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Sounds like a good time at the movies in either direction there. So a couple quick news items. Not going to go too long on this because I want to be respectful of everybody's time listening to the show. We are all busy people. It's the holiday season.
We're trying to give you your money's worth. Oh, wait. You don't actually pay for this.
Right. Considering it's free.
Right.
We hope you got your money's worth in the first 5 minutes. So all this is now more bonus.
There you go.
Question for you, Chris, on the movie news front. This isn't really movie news, but just more curiosity for me.
Sure.
This time of year, we start to get flooded with Christmas movies showing up on TV, showing up everywhere, being pushed down our throats.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite Christmas movie?
I don't. Well, I mean, unless you consider Nightmare Before Christmas, which I don't know what you consider that. Christmas
That's
versus
kind of a
Halloween.
hybrid. I'd say that could still fall in the Christmas category.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Sure, I knew that.
I'm actually fairly fond of, which I didn't realize until recently, I'm fairly fond of Elf.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
So those 2 I'm really fond of. How about you? Do you have favorites?
Yeah, it's just a personal thing for me, but I really, really liked Scrooged, the Bill Murray movie.
I need to revisit that one.
That one still, I think I just saw it at a good time, I think in high school, and it just really, I was a huge Bill Murray fan to begin with, and I just think anything he does is hysterical. And I love the Christmas Carol story. So any kind of adaptation of that with Bill Murray in the lead, I'm all for.
Is it family friendly or no?
For the most part, there's a couple scenes that are a little more questionable. But if you've got some preteens, they're fine with it. It's nothing they haven't heard before.
One thing that I saw recently that I thought was interesting, and I didn't know this when I watched it, I think I've only seen it once, was that Bill Murray has siblings. Apparently he has like 2 or 3 brothers. They're all in this movie with him. And I didn't know that. Yep. So that's cool. Do you know if they play like big role or not big roles?
Well, one of them plays his brother.
Oh, really?
So he's actually got a brother in the film.
Just like Scrooge. Okay. Huh. Yep. Interesting.
So one of his brothers plays his brother that he actually sees in the present day when he goes to tour. Okay. And then isn't it Brian Doyle Murray is his other brother? And I think he has a part in the film as well. So anyway, they're in there. All
right.
I think it's funny. The ending still always kind of makes it, gets me a little misty-eyed there. So sure. It's even kind of scary at times, too. I think it's a fun movie, so I like that.
Okay.
Well, while we're talking Christmas, even though I'm trying to reach for the connection here.
Sure.
Come the next couple years, we're looking at it being a festive feast for anybody that's enjoying these superhero movies that are coming out.
Okay.
Because just when you think they're starting to die off, they keep pushing forward with even more fervor.
Sure.
I mentioned to you a few episodes ago about the whole Man of Steel sequel.
Right.
That has now thrown Batman into the mix. So
Played
it's going
by
to
Ben
be
Affleck.
Ben Affleck versus the Man of Steel. So Superman versus Batman type of thing.
Right.
We'll see how that goes. I'm okay with that movie. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. Well, just this week they announced another addition to the film.
The same film?
Yeah.
Really?
They cast a young lady named Gal Gadot, who I think has been in the Fast and Furious movies for a while.
Somehow I've missed her performance.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those. And she's been cast as Wonder Woman. So we now have even more characters in the movie.
Oh, no.
My enthusiasm for the film is starting to wane just because I'm afraid they're
not Bruce Wayne, just Wayne.
Yeah, right.
Gotcha.
Very nice. Good. Just because I'm afraid it's the whole let's dump too much stuff into a movie. And I know what they're trying to do. Warner Brothers owns DC Comics. They're trying to make their own Justice League and building it up. And I'm just afraid, let's just give it time. Superman as a character needed another movie on its own, I felt like.
Probably.
To build that franchise up. To all of a sudden now cram everything into the second one, I think it's just rushing it. And I'm afraid it's going to be a little overdone. It's my gut feeling right now.
That has me extremely worried.
Well, and to boot on top of that, I was a pretty big fan of the Amazing Spider-Man movie. We reviewed it on the show here a few years ago. Mm-hmm. You, not so much.
Not so much.
You were more frustrated that it was just a retread of stuff we've already seen and all. Nothing really new added. I personally liked it better than the original Spider-Man movies because I thought it was more what I wanted out of a Spider-Man film.
Okay.
I could ignore the fact that they had the previous trilogy. I just kind of wiped this from my brain.
The sequel has the worst title ever, Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Well,
really?
There's a lot more going on with that sequel that I'm concerned about right now.
Do tell.
A brand new trailer came out yesterday that I was anxiously anticipating.
And so you probably watched it.
I did. My understanding with this film is it was going to be a continuation of the first film, and the bad guy was going to be Electro, played by Jamie Foxx.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm fine with that. Sounds good to me. Interesting. I was waiting for the build-up. That had been all the pre-press about it, is that Jamie Foxx was going to be the bad guy. He's going to be Electro, and it's going to be all this. Well, then slowly they've been releasing other little details about other people who are going to be in the film.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. Paul Giamatti is going to be in it, and he's going to be playing the Rhino, another bad guy. Then you've got Dane DeHaan, who did you ever see Chronicle, the film Chronicle?
No, I still haven't seen it.
He plays one of the kids there, the more interesting ones, I'll say.
Okay.
He's an up-and-coming actor. He's got some other roles he's coming up in soon. You're going to hear a lot more about him. He's been cast in the movie, and he is playing possibly another villain. Well, sure enough, the trailer came out, and yep, that's exactly what it is. I counted 3, possibly 4 villains in this
goodness.
movie.
Wow. You think they would have learned from the Spider-Man, was it Spider-Man 3 that did
it was Venom and Sandman all picked in there.
And that was
plus
just
a
2.
Green Goblin guy in there
so
too.
You think they would have learned from that.
I'm really nervous now. It's the same guy directing it, Mark Webb, which I have complete confidence in because I like the guy. I think he really did the right job with the first film he did. I'm really worried now. The trailer's over the top CGI, lots of big action sequences. I'm worried. I wasn't worried before I saw the trailer. Saw the trailer. I'm worried now. So I'm just got to go on record with that.
So why is it that it seems like you're okay with multiple good guys, Avengers. It's multiple bad guys that you're not okay with?
Well, it's more just watering down the film. The Avengers took a concept that I was actually a little nervous about when I heard. I think they did a good job with it. I wish there had been a couple characters they could have spent more time with, but otherwise it would have been a 3.5 hour movie.
Sure.
So I think they did the best they could. And again, they've been building up all these characters individually for a while.
You're
so
right.
it's like when you throw them together, it wasn't like we only got 10 minutes with each character to get any kind of development.
I got you.
My concern here is that you start cramming in these villains, these bad guys, and normally in superhero films, the bad guys are the ones who get a lot more of the chewing the scenery, the big scenes.
Yeah.
You kind of let the hero kind of get diminished.
Right.
And that's the focus on Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in the first film, was what I really liked about it.
Got you.
So I'm just concerned that they're going to be minimized screen time to play up all these big CGI, other bad guys, and we're really going to have a big mess of a movie. That's my concern now. I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
I don't know which will be a bigger mess. Wonder Woman coming into Superman, Batman, or having three villains. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting couple of years coming up with films in general. I mean, we've got the new Star Wars film in 2015.
Right.
We've got the Avengers 2 coming out in 2015. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 2 coming out next May. We've got the Man of Steel sequel, I think either late 14 or sometime 15, maybe. Wow. It's going to be, interesting.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's my news for now.
Okay.
Let's move on to our last segment of the show. This is where we like to pass along a recommendation of a film you may want to check out. Hopefully one you can find streaming online or available for rent online. Chris,
yes.
Let me just ask you this. Is your film a highbrow, artsy, intellectual film or not?
Wow.
I'm just trying to decide who goes first because I want to pick a tone that we leave the show with. And
I mean, it's not depressing. So,
because mine is a completely dumb, idiotic comedy.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's not that.
Okay.
So.
How about let's try to end on a more of a classy note.
Oh.
So let me go first, and then I'll let you end with a little more provocative film, possibly than what I'm going to bring up.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Sure.
So my recommendation.
I can't wait to. I wonder if I've seen this movie.
I don't think you have.
Okay.
So I've been watching the TV show Brooklyn Nine-Nine with my family.
It has Andy Samberg. Okay.
Yep. It's a very funny sitcom.
I've heard that it's supposed to be.
It's actually more like like an old 70s cop sitcom.
So it's not like
Barney
Reno
Miller type of
911.
No.
Okay.
It's not done in the documentary style mockumentary thing. This is a true straight out sitcom.
Okay.
In a police station, and it's very funny, and I like it a lot. So it got me curious. I was bored one morning, and I was flipping around Netflix. Andy Samberg has a movie that he did while he was still in Saturday Night Live.
Oh, no.
Called Hot Rod.
Oh, my gosh.
Have you seen this movie?
This is a recommendation?
Have you seen this movie?
Yeah, but I think I tried to forget that I have. But I will say
I was in the right frame of mind for this movie at the time.
Had you been to a bar?
Maybe. I think Hot Rod, because I expect it to be the dumbest possibly movie I've ever seen, I actually came out of it laughing a lot more than I expected to laugh. I'll just say this. I gave a recommendation several months ago of the film MacGruber.
Yeah.
If you liked MacGruber, if you thought MacGruber was a hoot, then Hot Rod for free on Netflix is worth your hour and a half.
Okay.
If you saw MacGruber and said, oh my gosh, I will never listen to another recommendation that Alan gives on the show, then whatever you do not watch Hot Rod. Okay? Because it is dumber than MacGruber. It is worse made than MacGruber, but I still found enough to be amused by.
Which do you think is the better, shall we say, film? I don't know if you can call those films, but which would you say was the better movie? MacGruber?
The better
Hot
movie
Rod. Yeah.
was MacGruber.
Okay, because I haven't seen that, and that's actually on a list that I do want to see. So,
but if you thought Hot Rod was absolutely horrible, I don't know if you're going to come away really impressed by MacGruber.
That's good. I like this. I like people actually setting my expectations low.
Okay,
so you're doing MacGruber a favor.
I just think Hot Rod is Andy Samberg as a stunt guy on motorcycle who thinks he's a really good stunt man, and it's idiotic, but it had a lot of funny parts to it, to the point where I was actually rewinding some of them. And watching some of the scenes again. Oh, yeah. It was funny enough. Basically, it's his Lonely Island trio of guys, his comedy group that would do all the digital shorts for Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
One of those three directed the film.
I got you.
while another one played his brother. This is the same group that made MacGruber, although it did not star any of them in MacGruber. One of them was the director, and they helped co-write it. So they're kind of a comedy troupe that is making some inroads in films and skits and all that online. Anyway, Hot Rod, it's on Netflix. It's for free if you're a Netflix subscriber. It's less than 90 minutes long, I think. You know what? You want to watch something dumb and you like MacGruber? All right, give it a shot.
Here you go.
Enjoy it.
I think it's MacGruber was R. Is Hot Rod R? I think it's more like
PG-13.
Okay.
It had some questionable moments in it for the kids, but I mean, there were just enough funny parts on it.
Sure.
Okay, so bring us back up, Chris. I took us from the beginning of the show, depressing movies with very, very serious tones. We went down to the superhero. We went even deeper down for the dumb comedies. Come on, you got to rise us back up a little bit to end the show here.
I think I can do that.
Okay.
The film I'm going to recommend is the newest by Noah Baumbach, and it's Francis Ha.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
And so he shot it in black and white, and it stars his, I guess, partner. I don't know if they're actually married or not, but Greta Gerwig. And I really thought it was, it's shot in New York, and it seems like it's kind of a modern day Woody Allen film, like a modern day Manhattan, because it was shot in New York, and it is in black and white, and it follows Francis Ha, who's kind of a quirky person. It's kind of like Annie Hall, except Annie Hall kind of had it together for Woody Allen in his film, and Francis Ha does not have it together.
Like she wants to be a dancer, but
she wants to be a dancer, and she is involved with a dance troupe, but it's more like she's kind of part-time with them, and she bops around from different apartments and doesn't really have a plan for herself. And what I really related to is it made me think of how I felt right after I graduated college. And you see yourself and you get your job and you're thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? Is this where I'm going to be? Is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life? And you may have other friends that do random, really odd things. And it just really reminded me of that period in my life. And I thought it was a very honest portrayal, and it didn't. Noah Baumbach sometimes I feel like can be kind of mean towards his character, like Squid and the Whale and then Margot at the Wedding. Those are the two that I'm thinking about, where the characters are kind of demeaned, or he's like kind of real unflattering portrayals of people. And I never thought, maybe it's because Greta Gerwig helped write the script and she's the lead character, maybe that helped soften his edges. But this is the most mainstream, if you can call it that, Noah Baumbach movie. I laughed a couple of times. I mean, more than a couple. I just really responded to it. Thought it was really good. Probably one of the year's best.
Oh, wow.
So
I've heard really good things about
it,
and that's the one I've got queued up to try to watch sometime soon as well. So very cool.
Definitely worthwhile.
It's on Netflix, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, very nice. Good. Okay, well, thank you for classing the joint up a little bit more here at the end, all right? Between my Spider-Man and Hot Rod, I mean, I feel like a 12-year-old boy doing a film review show here at the end.
Somebody's got to make it not so snobby.
Yeah,
so,
all right. Well, that's our show for today. 12 Years a Slave. Pay attention come Oscar time, because I'm sure it'll be mentioned and talked about a good bit.
I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
The documentary Blackfish, available online to watch on streaming or purchase for now.
Sounds like I'm a little bit more positive on it than Alan.
Yeah, I think you were more positive on both the films than I was. I was a little more muted on both of them, if you noted. Not saying either one is a bad film at all. I actually still would recommend seeing both of them. I just didn't respond to either of them quite like you did.
Got you.
Then we got Chris's positive takes on Frozen and Catching Fire. Good. Thank you for that. And then we talked about the Man of Steel sequel, the Superman sequel, or Spider-Man sequel, Scrooged, Nightmare Before Christmas, Elf, some movies to check out over the holiday season. We don't have another show until 2014, correct? So
I think that might be right.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing another one. Well,
maybe
we are. Stay tuned. Maybe there's another episode we'll squeeze out there. Actually, you know what? I think there is.
Okay.
That's right. It's early December. We got another one still. So, these Christmas recommendations of films, you can go ahead and watch them now. Everybody else has started their Christmas celebration like 2 months early. So go ahead and jump on in there. You can go see them now too. So we may have another show before the end of 2013. Pretty soon we'll be doing our best films of the year for 2013. We're going to try to at least mention some of those. And Chris, go ahead and be looking up to figure out what maybe your worst film of 2013 also. I think that's always
I'm not even sure I have to think that hard about it.
Wow, you're already that confident with it. Do not tease and tempt me with what it is. I want to be surprised when we hear it.
Okay.
So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Again, this is Footcandle Films on themesh.tv. Go to themesh.tv and look up and all the programs and shows available to listen to. Find Footcandle Films on there and you can see all of our back episodes. Post a question to us on the Contact Us page. Or follow us on Twitter or on Facebook through our film society, which is the Footcandle Film Society. If you go search for that at footcandle.org, you can learn a little bit more about our film society. That actually helps kind of spur some of the reviews that we do every once in a while. We bring a show here to Western North Carolina at least once a month. Big membership, almost 500 members now. Looks like we've got coming out to see films. And that gives us a lot of the good information and films to review here on this show as well. So a lot of ways you can learn about us and get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you. Did you see any of these films and have questions or comments or agreements or disagreements with us? We'd love to hear from you. Okay, Chris, I think that's it. So unless we get back together again, I think we will in December. So I will not say Happy New Year to you yet. We will wait until a couple more episodes to do that.
I'll have some eggnog and Christmas cookies.
Sounds good.
Discuss a couple of movies.
All right, everybody. Have a great time checking out some movies and letting us know what you think of these. Until next time, this is Footcandle Films. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.